Durkheim was born in Epinal, France in 1858. He died in 1917, 2 years after his son died in World War I. Born into a religious Jewish family, as a young man, Durkheim studied Hebrew, the OT, and the Talmud, but moved away from religion beginning in his early teens. Eventually, he abandoned religion and declared himself an agnostic. He didn't completely lose his interest in religion. Rather than a personal spiritual pursuit, religion became a matter of scholarly inquiry. Also, he remained convinced that every society needs an ethical moral base in order to function. He was convinced that the ethical base of society should be informed and guided by social science. Durkheim was an excellent student, and he attended France's most prestigious college, where he became disenchanted with the literary, aesthetic, and rhetorical leaning of the curriculum. He preferred the disciplined logic of philosophical arguments and hard facts and findings of the sciences. Between 1882 and 1887, he taught in various schools in Paris. Similar to Comte, Durkheim was convinced that observation of facts and development of theories to explain these facts would result in a body of knowledge that could lead to the creation of a better society. And in fact, it was Durkheim who, through persuasion and connections, successfully acquired for sociology recognition as a discipline that could be taught in the academy. Durkheim's principal ideas are discussed in his 4 major publications: The Division of Labor in Society, Rules of the Sociological Method, Suicide, and Elementary Forms of the Religious Life. As mentioned before, Durkheim's main project was the establishment of sociology as a separate discipline, possessing a separate subject of study and therefore its own methodology. Underlying this goal is his conviction that society is integrated and his preoccupation with one main question: what is it that holds society together? In his first major work, The Division of Labor in Society, Durkheim presents a general theory of social organization that emphasized a number of issues and concepts. The first issue was social solidarity. Social solidarity, or the cohesion of social groups, was a major theme in Durkheim's work. In fact, this theme is explored in all of his 4 major works, all of which explore the nature of social bonds that tie social groups and/or the individual to society. Durkheim was especially concerned about modern societies where people often don't know their neighbors, and where people often hold jobs in impersonal companies and organizations, in other words, that were increasingly individualistic. He asked how, under such conditions, could people feel tied to one another? So, The Division of Labor in Society, his first major work, is about the shifting basis of social solidarity as societies evolved from being undifferentiated and simple to being complex and differentiated. He argued that the question of social solidarity and integration depended on several related issues. How are individuals made to feel part of the larger social collective? How are their desires and wants constrained in ways that allow them to participate in the collective? And how are the activities of individuals and other social units coordinated and adjusted to one another? In The Division of Labor in Society, Durkheim distinguished between 2 types of social solidarity and societies: mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity. Each rests on different principles of social integration, involving different morphologies, different systems of beliefs, and different relations between social and symbolic structures. The distinction is both a descriptive typology and a theoretical statement about the changing forms of social integration that emerge in increasingly differentiated social structures. Mechanical solidarity exists in pre-modern, i.e., small, traditional, undifferentiated societies. It's characterized by feelings of likeness or similarity, and it's based on everyone doing and feeling similar things. In these small, simple societies, circumstances force people to be able to perform various tasks, roles, and functions. For example, women, children, and men were all needed to pick crops at harvest time despite their varying individual levels of competence. At the end of harvest, everybody partook in celebrations as well. Governmental decisions, personal conflicts, holidays, etc. are shared by everyone in the community. Importantly, individual freedom, choice, and autonomy are low in societies characterized by mechanical solidarity. The collective conscience, later known as collective representations, was a significant social consequence of the shared work experience. People are born into the collective conscience or culture of a society. This culture regulates their perceptions and behaviors. Through the concept of collective conscience, then, Durkheim was indicating that aspects of culture, such as systems of values, beliefs, and norms, constrain the thoughts and actions of individuals. Durkheim's preoccupation with the collective conscience is what leads to one of the most common criticisms of his ideas. Critics claim that he overlooks the role of the individual in producing and reproducing the social order. We'll discuss this more as we examine his other ideas and concepts. For Durkheim, the collective conscience in varying states had four variables: volume, the greater degree to which values, beliefs, and rules of the collective conscience are shared by members of a society; intensity, the extent to which the collective conscience has the power to guide and constrain a person's thoughts and actions; determinateness, the degree of clarity in the components of the collective conscience; and religious versus secular content, the ratio of religious to purely secular symbols in the collective conscience. The second type of solidarity is organic solidarity. Organic solidarity exists in modern societies. With the division of labor, society becomes differentiated. That is, people do not necessarily all engage in the same work or share the same ideas and beliefs. Labor becomes specialized in large, complex societies. People increasingly don't like each other, but depend on one another. So organic solidarity is a type of solidarity in which people are interdependent, forming a complex web of cooperative associations. So solidarity comes from each person cultivating individual differences in knowing that each is doing their part for the good of the whole. Hence, the division of labor provides cohesion. As Durkheim put it, things are entirely different as labor becomes divided up. The different parts of the aggregate, since they fulfill different functions, cannot be easily separated. For example, relationships with one's mechanic or computer technician. We may not know the mechanic or technician personally, but we know that they know how to fix cars or computers. We feel dependent on them because they know things that we don't know, just as they feel dependent on us for our business. So, cohesion in modern societies depends on feelings of interdependence based on specialization rather than feelings of oneness based on similarity. Note that for Durkheim, organic solidarity is stronger than mechanical solidarity. Durkheim identifies three pathological or abnormal forms of the division of labor. The first is the anomic division of labor. Anomy, which is not well developed in the division of labor in society, but later in suicide, literally means to be without norms or laws. So anomy represents insufficient normative regulation of individuals' activities, something that occurs with the transformation of society from mechanical to an organic basis of social solidarity, which leads to the weakening of values. It involves feelings of disorientation when there are too few norms or values to regulate our behavior. The result is that individuals do not feel attached to the collectivity. And the results of the anomic condition included feelings of alienation among workers whose only attachment is to the monotony and heavy schedule dictated by machines of the industrial age, and escalated frustrations and sense of deprivation manifested by increasing numbers of revolts. The second is inequality and the forced division of labor. Durkheim viewed inequality based on inheritance of privilege as abnormal. He advocated an inheritance tax that would eliminate the passing of wealth across generations. Unlike Marx, Durkheim did not, however, oppose the accumulation of capital and privilege as long as it was earned and not inherited. So Durkheim argued that the division of labor should occur spontaneously. That is, it should emerge naturally from the social system in response to population growth and density. So the division of labor should correspond to differences in people's ability. It was abnormal in organic society for the division of labor to occur due to a powerful elite whose power come from inherited wealth. This situation represents a forced division of labor. Remember that Durkheim was also preoccupied with the establishment of sociology as a discipline distinguishable from philosophy and psychology. Therefore, he advocated for the development of a methodology that is objective and empirical, also known as positivism. In Rules of the Sociological Method, Durkheim asserts that there exists a different category of facts, social facts. So Durkheim lumps together behaviors, thoughts, and emotions as the subject of sociology. Importantly, social facts transcend any individual and are therefore external and constraining. They're external in two ways. First, individuals are born into an established set of structures and an existing set of values, beliefs, and norms. So these facts are initially external to the individual. As people learn to play roles in social structures, to abide by norms, and to accept basic values, they feel and sense something outside of them. Second, even when humans actively and collaboratively create social structures, values, beliefs, and norms, these social facts become an emergent reality that is external to their creators. They are also coercive and constraining. That is, the structures, norms, values, and beliefs of the social world compel certain actions, thoughts, and dispositions. They impose limits, and when deviations occur, sanctions are applied to deviance. Also, social facts are internalized in that people want and desire to be part of social structures and to accept the norms, values, and beliefs of the collective. So he wrote, "Institutions may impose themselves upon us, but we cling to them, they compel us, and we love them. Social facts dominate us and impose beliefs and practices upon us, but they rule us from within, for they are in every case an integral part of ourself." The external nature which he assumes social facts have is as important as the coercive power he insists they possess, as he is against utilitarian and rationalistic ideologies that seek to assert the role of the individual. Durkheim minimizes the individual, though he acknowledges that we do not passively receive social facts, but that in assimilating them to ourselves, we individualize them. Social facts must also be considered things. As things, they become data that can be studied, and as such, they are the starting point of science. Social facts must be considered detached from the conscious beings who form their own mental representations of them. So it's necessary to discard all preconceptions, what Durkheim thought of as objectivity. There are rules for distinguishing between normal and pathological social facts. Social facts that are normal are the most frequently occurring characteristics of the species. Social facts that deviate from the norm, or most common, are pathological. An example is crime. Crime, usually conceived of as pathological, for Durkheim is both normal and necessary in healthy societies. It's normal in that it is impossible for any society to exist without it, according to Durkheim. There are two reasons. Crime defines the moral boundaries of society, and in doing so, communicates to the society's members what are acceptable behaviors. Durkheim writes that crime affirms and reaffirms collective feelings on which it is based and which are necessary for its existence. These collective sentiments are clear-cut and strong. Therefore, crime plays an integrative role. Crime is indispensable because it enables social change. Crimes, or violations of the collective conscience, provides options for progress, for example, the civil rights movement. Durkheim summarizes his methodology as being independent of all philosophy, being wholly objective, in other words, dominated by the idea that social facts are things. Therefore, sociologists must lay aside preconceived notions, penetrate the facts through their most objective characteristics, study them and find a means of classifying them as healthy or pathological, and look for explanations that are social in nature. It is exclusively sociological, and again, bear in mind that Durkheim's objective is to establish the discipline in the university. Durkheim's work on suicide is both an example of theory and methods. He conducted rigorous research of suicide rates across societies, historical periods, and different social groups, and demonstrated that social rather than psychological forces were at the root of these acts. In linking the different suicide rates of particular societies and social groups to specific characteristics of that society or social group, Durkheim both demonstrates that individual pathologies are rooted in social conditions and also shows how sociologists can scientifically study social behavior. Most importantly, locations with highest suicide rates are not those with the highest rates of alcoholism and mental illness, an observation that undermines notions that abnormal psychological conditions are the sole determinants of suicide. Rather, he maintained that suicide rates are higher wherever individuals lack moral regulation or integration. In making that argument, Durkheim undermined beliefs that the main determinants of the individual act of suicide were pathological and therefore abnormal psychological conditions. As he did in the Division of Labor and Society, Durkheim outlines fundamental differences between traditional or pre-modern and modern societies, seeking to explain why suicide is rare in the former and more frequent in the latter. And he argued that traditional and modern societies differed not only in rates of suicide, but also in types. Durkheim identifies 4 types of suicide, 2 of which are more characteristic of modern industrial society, while the other 2 are more likely to occur in traditional pre-modern society. Egoistic suicide occurred in modern society, owing to the pathological weakening of the bonds that unite groups, leading to increased individuality. Thus, individuals are increasingly less integrated into the social whole. For example, higher rates of suicide are found among single, divorced, and widowed individuals than among married persons, and there are higher rates of suicide among married people without children. Durkheim also argued that egoism helps explain why suicide rates are higher among Protestants than Catholics or Jews. Protestantism emphasizes an individual relationship with God, which means that the individual is less tied to the religious clergy and members of the congregation. For Durkheim, growth in egoistic suicide was a natural outcome of increasing individualism in modern industrial society. For example, in big cities, it's not uncommon for people to live alone. In contrast, people in traditional societies tend to live with parents until they get married. Parents then move in with the children, or vice versa if a spouse dies, and unmarried siblings live with either parents or other siblings. Anomic suicide was another type of suicide in modern society. It's intertwined with the increasing lack of integration and the lack of moral regulation or normlessness. In other words, lack of regulation by norms, values, etc. Durkheim maintains that modern societies are chronically anomic, that is, they're characterized by a lack of regulation of the individual by the collective. So anomic suicide is a pathological consequence of this chronic state of anomie. In this case, the individual commits suicide because they feel isolated and morally adrift, or lacking in moral guidance. Anomie and anomic suicide can be particularly severe and can increase during times of intense social change. During those times, the authority of family, church, and community may be challenged or questioned, and without moral guidance or authority, individuals may feel that they have no moral anchor. For example, research found that the 2008 global recession contributed to an uptick in the suicide rate for men, but not women, after comparing unemployment rates and suicide rates in 54 countries around the world. Anomie can also result from positive social change, for example, winning the lottery, which can bring with it an unexpected list of social and personal issues. Altruistic suicide is one of the types of suicide in traditional societies. It's characteristic of small traditional societies where social regulation is intensive, limiting the development of individuality. It involves individuals giving their lives for the social group and sacrificing themselves. The Aztecs' practice of human sacrifice for the moral or spiritual benefit of the group is an example of altruistic suicide. Finally, fatalistic suicide is rooted in hopelessness because the norms of society oppress and stifle individuals. That is, there's too much regulation by rules of society. For example, slaves who had little chance of changing their personal situations.